the cries and tears of America.
Abraham Lincoln was born on February 12, 1809 in a log cabin. He lived until his assassination on April 15, 1865. While growing up, he was mostly self-educated. He was involved in the American government a whole lot, although he had more history in America than just a president. He was first a county lawyer, then he was Illinois' state legislator, and finally, he was in the United States House of Representatives. Not all of his government relations were successful. Twice he tried to get himself a seat in the United States Senate. He was the 16th President of the United States and was sworn into office March 18, 1861. While in office, he helped end slavery and won the Civil War for the North. Some other great accomplishments were keeping the Union alive and promoting economic and financial modernization. John Wilkes Booth was born on May 10, 1838 and died on April 26, 1865 in Garrett's Farm. He was shot in the back by Boston Corbett, a Union soldier. However, it's possible that Booth committed suicide. The truth is unknown. Corbett disobeyed orders to hold fire, and he shot Booth out of pure anger. While growing up, Booth was part of the Booth theatrical family. This family was from Maryland. The Booth theatrical family was so famous that they had their own theater. Booth's father was a well-known actor as well. In the 1860s, Booth was at his pinnacle of acting fame. While being a stage actor, he was also on the Confederate side during the American Civil War. He extremely despised that Abraham Lincoln was president. He also hated that the South had lost in the American Civil War to the Union. John Wilkes Booth never wanted to abandon slavery. He didn't want this to happen because the slaves were a huge part of the South's economy. He also didn't want Lincoln to extend voting rights, making it possible for emancipated slaves to vote. Before Booth even had a plot to kill Lincoln, he wanted to kidnap him. Once kidnapped, Booth would take the president to Richmond, and President Lincoln would be exchanged for Confederate Army prisoners of war. On the morning of April 14, 1865, Booth was notified that President Lincoln would be seeing Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater. Booth quickly planned with his other conspirators to assassinate President Lincoln, Vice President Andrew Johnson, and Secretary of State William Seward. When Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, it caused grief for all of America. This is the President's Box at Ford's Theater where Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. The Derringer handgun was the choice of weapon for Booth for assassinating President Lincoln. John Wilkes Booth deliberately sabotaged the door to the President's Box, making it easier for him to access it later. John Parker, President Lincoln's bodyguard, had left for a drink at the time of Booth's entry. At this time, Parker was known as a heavy drinker. With his absence, Booth had the perfect opportunity to sneak in and assassinate President Lincoln. After Abraham Lincoln was shot, John Wilkes Booth jumped from the balcony. Major Henry Rathbone tried to grab Booth. However, he was too slow and slashed by Booth's knife. John Wilkes Booth then escaped from Ford's Theater. He was heading south. Once south, he would be protected by the Confederate Army. However, he only made it a total distance of 98 miles to arrive at Garrett's Farm. Once John Wilkes Booth assassinated President Abraham Lincoln, he was on his horse and off to Surratt Tavern. Here, he acquired weapons and ammunition for his long journey ahead. When Booth first jumped from the President's Box back at Ford's Theater, he injured his leg from the 12-foot fall. Booth required immediate medical attention. However, he was not able to receive this attention until his second stop at the house of Dr. Mudd. The third destination in Booth's journey was the house of Samuel Cox. Here, he acquired mental help. Booth's next stop in his journey led him to the Potomac River. Here he planned to cross the river, making him much closer to the south. This idea could not become a reality, for Booth's leg was not in the best condition. This forced him to stay 6 days in the woods until he was both physically and mentally healthy enough to cross. Once he did attempt to cross the river, he accidentally landed too far north. He had to go back, retracing his steps, and cross at another point. While Booth was in the woods of the Potomac River, a $100,000 reward was issued on Booth's death. All the troubles of the journey so far had made Booth extremely tired. He found a place to rest at Lucas's farm. Booth's final stop was at Garrett's farm. Here, he hid and rested. The rest was helping him regain his energy from all the pain and troubles he had endured throughout the journey. Little did Booth know that the Union investigators were getting information on his location. They had been close on his tail for most of the journey. Once they knew he was at Garrett's farm, they quickly rushed to the location, hoping that they could capture Booth. Union soldiers surrounded the barn, threatening to light the barn in flames. Booth refused. The soldiers were ordered to hold fire. However, Boston Corbett shot Booth out of pure anger. The shot had been fired through a hole in the barn. On the 15th of April, as word of the murder crossed the nation, bells tolled and cannons were fired every half hour for a day and night. Union armies were shaken by the news and wanted to go back for war with the South. As buildings were draped in black and businesses closed, mobs forced known or suspected sympathizers of the South to decorate their own homes in black. Grief and anger struck the northern states in roughly equal proportion. Even many who had hated Lincoln were furious, and Southern sympathizers hid from mobs either in their homes or at police stations. Some were tarred and feathered, others were supremely angered at it. There were instances of open supporters of the South being beaten to death, and of Union troops shooting people who took joy from Lincoln's death. Police arrested for insulting Lincoln, too. They were dragged to courts, where prison sentences were given out immediately. Admittedly, there were some loyal Democratic and anti-Lincoln areas in the North that widely celebrated the president's murder. Some states included the Union County, Illinois, and Indiana. News of such celebrations provoked further outrage in the larger populations. Radical Republicans seized control during this period, whipping up public anger and pleading with the new president, Andrew Johnson, to allow retaliation against the former rebels. The radicals had long believed that Lincoln's plans for amnesty and reconstruction in the South were weak, and dearly wanted the South to suffer for its succession. In general, the South reacted against the assassination of Lincoln. On the 16th of April, Easter Sunday, churches were fuller than they have ever been in the previous 10 years. A number of preachers even implied that Lincoln had been removed by God's intent because he was too merciful toward the South. There was demand to see the body, and a long path by rail was selected for Lincoln's journey to his grave. Mapped to retrace his path to Washington, this was the same path that he took when he was sworn into office of presidency. Nobody had predicted the death of sadness that would greet the dead president. Over 25,000 people went to the White House on April 18th to see the body. It was then taken by grand procession to the Capitol, where another 25,000 people paid their respects. It is estimated that as many as a total of 7 million Northerners looked up upon the coffin. Also, an estimated of 1.5 million had looked directly into the face of President Lincoln. The funeral procession finally ended after 14 days in Springfield, Illinois.